Hi, welcome to my YouTube channel. This is the Wicked Bee of the West YouTube channel. My name is Stephanie Diana Eubank. I'm a doctoral candidate from Concordia University, Chicago, a doctoral program of business administration with my research focus being specifically in remote work and remote leadership. I'm also an operational management professor at Stan State. And I'm here to talk about a really interesting predicament that I saw in the news. And I'm linking the video that originally led me to this from attorney Ryan. So, Mark Benioff, the CEO of Salesforce, has a really interesting plan to try and lure people to come back to work at Salesforce in person, which is to donate $10 per person that chooses to come into work remotely or in person, I'm sorry, and to stop working remotely. This is really not okay. First and foremost, all of the articles that I found on this particular offer do not specify what nonprofit or charity he is planning to donate to, only that it's a local charity. And fun fact, when you Google Mark Benioff and his wife, they are the heads of a number of boards of local charities and head their own nonprofit. So they'd basically be giving money to themselves to control to try and get people to come in to work in person. And in this way are publicly shaming on the internet people who are refusing to come in and work in person because they prefer working remote. Now, not only is this like a new version of basically following Cersei Lannister down the street yelling shame while ringing a bell at remote workers, it's not a good look for Mark Benioff. And here's why. Again, nonprofits that are headed by major CEOs and wealthy other philanthropists are not heavily regulated or mandated to have additional regulations as far as how they're spending, and those people get to still keep control of their money. For a more concise explanation on that topic, I've linked Adam Conover's Adam Ruins Everything Philanthropy into the description and into my blog so that you can get a better understanding of why this is bad. But moreover, this is bad business for Salesforce, and I'm going to tell you why. And the math does not lie. So aside from that not being a good look for the company to shame remote workers, let's do the math. So instead of bothering to ask employees, what do you need? What infrastructure do you need put in place to be able to come back into the office? For most workers and most companies, the reason they're not asking it is because there isn't anything they can do, and here's why. So, according to NBC Bay Area, the average worker in San Francisco, which is where Salesforce main office is located, which is one of the most expensive cities in the country. One of, not the, but one of the most expensive cities in the country. Now, based on their research, they found that most employees who work in San Francisco do not live in San Francisco and are traveling on average 34 minutes and up one way per day, which means that most of those people are coming from Solano County, Alameda County, or Contra Costa County. Shout out to the East Bay. However, by doing that, they're spending on average $11,000 per year just on the commuting, and that's not even counting if they're using public transit in place or to supplement part of their route. Now, if we calculate that info into the fact of how much each worker who works in person is paid at Salesforce, according to Zippia.com, Salesforce workers on average, now this is the average, this is not the total overall, or even accounting for the outliers who make substantially more. This is the average income for a worker at Salesforce is between $95,000 a year and $137,000 a year. Now, for those outside the Bay Area, that sounds like a lot, but in the Bay Area and in most of California, it is not, which is part of why so many people during COVID decided to move out here to the Central Valley and work remotely, so that even when they have hybrid and have to come into the office 1 or 2 times a month, or even 2 or 3 times a week, it is cheaper for them to be able to do so and commute from here, because the cost of living and the overall costs here are much better and they get more bang for their buck, which is a totally different, as far as architectural and real estate discussion, we can have another time. Now, considering this fact of having to commute and the cost of commuting and the high rise in housing, let's also look at what is middle class for those areas. So Alameda County specifically, the median income in that county is $155,000 per year, with a range to be in middle class from $104,000 a year to $311,000 per year. And it is only off by a little bit for Contra Costa and Solano County. They're about at the same for Alameda County. All right. So that's the range for middle class, which means that the people who are working for Salesforce, who are only making in between 95,000 and 137,000 a year, are making at the lowest end of the middle class and under the median income for the areas that they can live in, which is significantly lower than those averages for the city of San Francisco, where the Salesforce office is located. Let's also put into perspective that surrounding areas such as Silicon Valley, 80K is considered low income. Put that into perspective. 80K is considered low income for San Jose and San Francisco. And again, that article reported how the article from Fox 11 News from Los Angeles gave a whole breakdown for the state of California, showing the fact that for the lowest median for to be considered low income for Santa Clara and San Francisco counties is 80K. And it's the same for Solano, Contra Costa, and Alameda. And their medians for Santa Clara County and San Francisco were much higher than the 155,000 per year as Alameda, Contra Costa, and Solano counties. So that means these people working at Salesforce, if they're in person, are already making the lowest end of middle class and are not even near the median income for the lower cost areas that they're living in and commuting to work. That makes no financial sense for the company or the employee, because employees that are having to scrimp and save and work additional jobs are not focused on your company, and they can't afford to be. Remote workers also have a benefit that in-person workers don't. So if you're an in-person worker who has a family and you have to commute 34 minutes plus per day one way, so let's say that's about an hour to an hour and a half, leaving cushioning in case there's traffic, accidents, etc. So that means you are about half an hour away. God forbid something happens to your kids at daycare, at school. And with all that's in the news, that's a really scary thought. And I can speak from personal experience. When I first went back to work after having my first son and was working in person, I spent a lot of time crying, missing my baby. And once I had been given the opportunity by one of my mentors to work remotely, 100% remotely, full time, I jumped at it. And even having help with my children, it was just a comfort to know that something happens, I can be there in 5 minutes or less. Something happens, I can jog to their school in less time than it would take me to drive it if I were commuting. Even with my injuries, I can jog to my kids' school and I would still get there faster than if I were working in person. And you don't have an option in many cases to have your kids go to school in the school district of which you're working in. So as such, you got to have, and oftentimes the school district you're in is better than the one where your office is located. With all of this being said, as far as being able to have a work-life balance and have for companies to have employees who have the energy and the income to be able to just focus on your company and not have to be overemployed so that they're not pulling from your resources and are able to afford a reasonable standard of living on top of not being overly stressed, having to deal with commuting. You are able to increase your company culture by teaching your leaders how to better communicate more openly and authentically and invest in them openly and continually communicating with their team, not just to check up on projects, but just to get to know their teams. Will help increase your company culture and the synergy that is pushed in this particular example of Salesforce's plan. The math doesn't lie. Remote, it's here to stay. Why are we demonizing it still? It's obviously here to stay. And based on the math, it's the best option for businesses and for employees. If you want more information on how you can cultivate your workforce so that you can better lay out and have increased productivity in remote work, you're welcome to check out my consulting services and courses. All the links will be in the description below. That's all I have for you for today. And remember, remote work, it's here to stay.